Namaste and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth, or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake, lie, or imagination. So, ancient scriptures from India, like Ramayana and Mahabharata, which I have proved, and many other authors like me have proved, that we have historical, geographical, astronomical, and proof so many that nobody else can match. You cannot call them as mythology or mythology, whatever in whichever way you pronounce. Comes from the old Sanskrit root word known as myth. Sanskrit in Devanagari it will be ma, chote ki matra, and tha. On the other hand, Sattology is the only word which you can use for ancient scriptures from India or Native American scriptures or native scriptures all over the world. Today we have very, very special guest, and he's coming here for the first time. And you must have seen him in many other channels, many other places, many other publications. He has published over 450 publications, and this is just the beginning of, I'll have to read through because there's so much details over there. He is globally acknowledged as strategic and security analyst, a PhD from JNU, and with over 45 years of experience at national and international fields. And he's a veteran infantry general. And the list goes on and on. I'll put a bio in the profile of the video itself. You can watch him. For the students who are watching it live, you must have already seen it already now. So without delay, let us welcome Major General Shashi Asthana. Namaste and welcome to the show, sir.
Namaste. Uh, Pleasure to be on your show, and namaste to all your viewers.
So, no, when the American media talks about USA, they forget to mention one important fact, that after World War II, they have never won any conflict directly. And most of the conflicts have agreed in some business agreements or withdrawal agreements. And the last one was Afghanistan withdrawal. And most of the American students already know that, but there is no way to publicly say it because the way the American media and American laws work, it's considered a kind of national heresy to claim to say that at all. So, in your viewpoint, can you tell us like the history of American wars briefly so that viewers can understand?
Uh, Firstly, as far as USA is concerned, it is certainly the sole superpower as of now, and has the highest comprehensive national power, which consists of all the powers, whether it is political, diplomatic, military, you name, and technology, you name everything. The most important thing is, and why USA has been positioned so, it also has a lot to do with the geography. It doesn't have a land border threat from anybody. Geographically, it is so poised that it has all natural resources. It is self-contained in food, self-contained in energy, self-contained in technology, self-contained in everything you name. And that is how a fair amount of, shall I say, credit of comprehensive national power or development of comprehensive national power goes to that. Also, the oldest democracy, and also we can say a victor of World War II. And at the same time, I think a fair amount of, shall I say, the kind of wars it has fought. There are certain positive sides and there are certain negative sides. It is interesting to note that USA has tried almost 64 covert and 6 overt attempts for regime change. And that has been recorded in all the Wikipedias and encyclopedias and things like that. The as was being mentioned by the anchor, let me just highlight. There is a writer, Sean McFate, and he has written a book, The Nature of War. And he questions as to why is it that a country which has the largest, shall I say, most powerful military, which is most economically advanced, is losing all wars. And then he goes on to say that while we are fighting conventional war, perhaps our strategy is wrong. And where we are fighting, we are not actually making the best of it. Now you take example of various wars. Now let's go talk about Vietnam War. You had all the comprehensive national power and military power and combat power in favor of America. But the American forces did not use terrain to its advantage. And the terrain friction was used better by Vietnamese. And that is why, despite so many years and so many casualties, such a mighty army had to come out empty-handed. Take the case of Afghanistan. No doubt, every kind of arsenal USA had, but yet you find that at the end of the day, Taliban had its say and Taliban is in power. USA went there to obviously resolve the threat of Al-Qaeda and dislodge Taliban and make a regime change. As far as Taliban regime change is concerned, they did do the regime change. But thereafter, the way they fought was more, the troops were more in towns. The rough areas were being used by Afghani fighters. There was not so much of on-ground intelligence. There was a fair amount of technological intelligence. But when it comes to winning the heart and mind of people, that part was lacking. And Sean McFate mentions in his book that when US is launching a shadow war, in their context, people don't matter. But the fact is, people do matter. And when you go with a logic that people don't matter, then what happens is the Talibanis, they did get local support and they couldn't be eliminated. They were there in the rural areas, which were tough areas. And basically, the USA was resorting to standoff attacks. Now you talk about the diplomatic war and political wars. Now, in political wars, you went for the regime changes. US has tremendous hold on United Nations. Now, whether you take the case of Syria, you take the case of Iraq, you take the case of Afghanistan, all three, the US intervention was without United Nations sanction. And not that, I've done 3 tenures in United Nations. I must tell you that they did try for the sanction, but nobody in UN agreed. And therefore, they went ahead without the sanctions. Now, when you are going ahead without the sanctions, how do you justify that you are on the side of law and order, that global law and order should prevail? So therefore, when you went with this kind of mandate, and when you know that you don't believe in global law and order, but you want to prove that you are enforcing global law and order, then what happens is that the local population is not with you. And when they are not with you, you can be there, you can win certain bouts, but at the end of the day, you find that you were not getting the kind of victory which you envisaged for yourself. So this is how the things have. Regime change has been the tool of a strong nation. It's not that regime change before USA, nobody did it. Because earlier also, if you see, whether you take Chanakya, whether you take Sun Tzu, you take anybody, when it comes to political wars, everybody says that, okay, if you are strong, then everybody should be aligned to you and you must work out your intelligence in a manner and your activities in a manner that the regimes around you are in favor of you. And that's how you can get the best out of economy, economy, diplomacy, your strength, your everything. So US is no different. But then the fact is that they have gone overboard. They have done a number of things. Like today, we talk of US is for democracy. Yes, I agree. US is for democracy, the oldest democracy. But then the fact is that they did join up and they were supporting dictators next to the largest democracy in the country, in the world. That was when Musharraf was in power. So the question is, there are shades of, shall I say, double gaming at places, which do not convince that what is being spoken of is actually true. And that's why, obviously, you find a little shade of people having different views about United States itself. So I'll stop here and look for the next question first.
So Monroe Doctrine, which was created in 1812, which was ultimately because of the colonial influences also, where USA made it an exclusive right to have where the sole military interventionist in the South America, because they did not want French or Dutch or Spaniards to create more influence than the Anglo-Saxons, which came from UK. Now, Monroe Doctrine has been used for regime changing in South America extensively, and it gives sanction to the US Congress to wage and the American president to wage a war wherever they want to do in South America. But it has been extended to other countries also. We saw in Philippines, we saw in other places where the American military has occupied many islands, including Papua New Guinea. Some parts of Papua New Guinea now, they recently had an agreement also. Now, the you mentioned about the United Nations also, wherein American forces went without the sanction to invade those three countries in the Middle East. In fact, 9 wars were created by President Obama himself, who recently was castigating India on some political rights or political issues of the minorities of India, religious minorities, particularly Muslims. But when you look at the American definition of democracy, which you touched also, and in 1965, the first time the Black African Americans got the right to vote. So officially, democracy started in 1965 in USA. And even today, Native Americans who live in reservations cannot vote because they don't have physical addresses. They have to go to a post, and post box addresses are not accepted as bona fide voting addresses as per the US Register of Voters, like the Election Commission of India. So even today, many Native Americans cannot vote who live in far-flung areas in the remote reservations. Now, so considering all this light, it questions American democratic credentials. India has a thriving democracy since 1950, and American democracy gave rights to Black African Americans to vote in 1965. So India technically becomes the oldest democracy also. So my question is now to you is that considering all these facts, so where does the democracy as a definition of American definition of democracy, where the Anglo-Saxons became more in numbers than the Native Americans in 1908, and that's where the democracy officially started, but not actually realized till 1965. So how do you talk about an Indian perspective and the American perspective democracy definition?
Firstly, it's a very good question, I must say, for the reason because many feel that democracy is perfect and try to search perfectness in democracy. Whereas the fact is that yes, democracy is a system. We all love democracy, and it is one of the best, not one of the best system. But no democracy is perfect, including American. Now, first, let me touch upon the American part of it. There is no doubt, you mentioned certain points. Let me add certain points. There is a gun culture in America. We could also interpret sitting outside as it's a infringement into right to live, because the number of people getting killed due to gun is far in excess of people getting killed due to terrorism in some large countries. So therefore, I think it's a problem as far as USA is concerned. But the geopolitics, the economic interests, and the power play of these, shall I say, arms lobby is so strong that everyone falls short of uh, rectifying this issue. Similarly, you talk of there can be many reasons, and there are many other, shall I say, interpretations. You talk of, let's say, the rights of pregnancy. Uh, Now, there also, obviously, some people have been raising voice to say, okay, I must have the right on my body. This can be interpreted differently because of different reasons. Every country has different problems, and therefore, there are different laws in that context. But then the question is, if you say that it is a perfect democracy, it is certainly not a perfect democracy. Similarly, when we come to some other areas in terms of supporting democracies. There are, you take the case of Afghanistan, there was a democratic government in place. But because US troops wanted to come out, you struck a deal with Taliban. And the way Taliban is dealing with its ladies is horrible. And therefore, it is a botched withdrawal, and a withdrawal which has actually spoiled the so-called democracy as well as the human right credentials of that country, maybe for a long time, for decades, if not century. These are certain pitfalls. Now, as far as India is concerned, let me put it this way. There was a lot of talk when Prime Minister Modi went there that, okay, there should be some lecturing on democracy, and hopefully, I think good sense prevailed, and there was nothing of that kind, although one reporter did ask. Now, let me put it in no uncertain terms. From the time India became independent, everybody has a right to vote and is voting. There are, let me also say in no uncertain terms, that no change of power, all changes of power have been bloodless and through voting rights. So it's a stable democracy. Secondly, when we talk of, there is a lot when people say that, okay, the rights of Muslims are being curbed or minorities are being curbed. Now, let me put in no uncertain terms, because we keep dealing with it on everyday basis. There is not a single Muslim who has moved out of India because of persecution. Conversely, all Muslim countries, Hindus as well as Sikhs, had to move out of those countries and come back to India because of persecution. Today, every single Muslim, irrespective of how his political orientation is, he doesn't want to go out of India. He says, this is my country. And in armed forces, I think their contribution is equally strong. There is just no problem whatsoever. Every single, shall I say, the social scheme has no tag that whether it is for Hindu or for Muslims or otherwise. Now you will find a lot of people looking at the saffron dress of Yogi Adityanath and talking about it. Can you believe it that he couldn't have won all the elections from last 5 elections? He has won continuously so many elections. He couldn't have done it without Muslim support. Although he is wearing the Hindu dress, all right. But then the fact is that every single policy of his is for everybody, is for every Indian. And the way he is governing, everybody is liking it. And that's why he is repeatedly getting elected. There has never been a case when he has not been elected. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's a very stable democracy. But then, as we all say, that no democracy is perfect, and no, shall I say, no governance system is perfect. I think Prime Minister Modi made a point at some place to say that India, and I would also re-emphasize to say that it is the most difficult country to govern. 2,500 political parties. You have 20 official languages. You have your dialects change after every 50 kilometers. You have different kind of, all kinds of variations which you can name. And yet, we have remained a stable democracy. So, that goes to say that there is something in this country wherein perhaps the democracy has matured, and we are a young country, because 77 years is not too long in the life of a country when compared to 300 years of United States. So yes, we are developing, and we are going ahead with that. Now, second part is how you deal with democracy. I've been yes, US keeps claiming to be champions of democracy. Absolutely fine. We all stand for democracy. We all stand for free and uh, open global world. We also stand for global law and order and a system which wherein there is no coercion, there is no political coercion, and there is no coercion which some of the aggressive countries in Asia are trying to do. But then the fact is that the converse is also true in terms of the alignments. When it suited, shall I say, United States, they did align to Shah of Iran. Now, when Shah of Iran was thrown out of power, then obviously Iran became a bad boy, and therefore the relations changed totally. Similarly, Saudi Arabia, they have been, that's not a democracy. Similarly, there have been other countries, and I will certainly say the case of India. When Musharraf was in power, it was a dictator, it was a coup. And after the coup, he was being supported by United States, and he was being given F-16, which can only be used against a democracy, that is India. So, therefore, the record is checkered, and I don't blame any country for that. I don't blame US, because the reason is that if you want to be number one, if you want to be superpower, then you will talk of national interest. Now, if your national interest lies in remaining a superpower, then you will act accordingly. So national interest dictates the national strategy, that is the grand strategy, and grand strategy then rolls down to diplomatic strategy, political strategy, shall I say, even nowadays, information warfare strategy. And also, US has the largest arms market. Now, if this arms market has to survive, then obviously there should be some fighting somewhere. There should be some security risk. Otherwise, we will buy the weapons. So obviously, so then starts the power play. What you see in Ukraine is again a big power contestation, and in that big power contestation, the ground contesting ground happens to be Ukraine, but there are interests involved. Similarly, for a country who is the lone superpower will always look for influence. Obviously, US knew that in case the Nord Stream 2 goes through, the influence of Russia on Europe will increase, and correspondingly, the influence of US on Europe will decrease. And therefore, there was no way that Nord Stream 2 should go through. And therefore, whatever has to be done needed to be done in US interest. May perhaps can be seen in some manner or the other, although everybody can have the interpretation as far as this war is concerned. So I would say that yes, there is nothing like perfect democracy, but then democracy is the best system, whether it is United States or India. And I would still go in for it in a manner that the autocratic systems. I've been to USA, China, Russia. I think by and large seen the entire globe, and I still find that irrespective of the imperfectness, I think our systems are the best. And whether it is US or India, I would say that we whatever little irksome problems are there, that we should resolve. But the system is certainly the best. Back to you.
Thank you for highlighting that, because many people, they think so in the American democracy. One thing I've noticed, I've been living here for a long time, and one thing I've noticed, that the money plays a very important role. Like you literally, the winnability of a candidate is directly proportional to the amount of money that person raises. This is the way American democracy works in any election, whether it's local or national or statewide. The consideration of votes is directly, like in case of India, is the votes that count. in USA, the money counts. So if a candidate raises more money, then it is naturally considered to be a winner. And that's been a kind of a very difference in democracy between US and India. Primarily in India, the votes count, and any type of money raising is not considered directly proportional to the votes. Now, coming to the second part, now, if you look at carefully the data, most of the countries which had democracies were attacked by the US for regime changing wars. So replacing a democratically elected government, like what happened in Ukraine, with a American money-backed democratic candidate, which is the comedian now, who is ruling Ukraine, and this is how the democracy-changing wars have happened. So, do you think that the democracy becomes a convenient tool for US to intervene or to increase corruption in the countries they want to target?
You are absolutely right. I think, again, a very good question for the simple reason, because when we talk of the vulnerabilities of democracy, this is one of the vulnerability of democracy, because in every democracy, whether US or India, you will have, there is a political party in power, there will be an opposition. Opposition, as far as opposition is concerned, everything which the party in power does is wrong. And they will latch on to anything which can get them in power. And that is where the vulnerability comes in. And it is easy to do a regime change. It's not all that easy in an autocratic system to do a regime change, because the dissent is dealt very harshly. Whereas in case of democracy, dissent is a way of life and is generally accepted. Now, when you have the dissent, and if you explore the dissent, then you will certainly find some vulnerable targets which you can utilize. And this has also changed the nature of war. Incidentally, I must tell you, very interesting study which we have been doing, that nowadays, more than the terrorism, a social, shall I say, a social movement, instigating a social movement, combining with terrorism, has become a very strong tool, because you have disgruntled people everywhere. Like any developing country, obviously everybody is not satisfied, so there will be disgruntled elements. When it is a democracy, obviously there will be some opposition guy who would like to be getting into power. Now you give him some tool, give him some reason, give him some money, and this guy makes a social unrest, and you have that kind of unrest, and it's a very big tool to handle the people in power. Now, can you believe it? When President Trump came to India, there was mass protests. The protest started the day he landed. The protest ended the day he landed, the day he left. Now, obviously, and I think he was intelligent enough to say that, okay, I'm not going to comment on that. So the issue is, obviously, it was motivated. So if you see, was there a cause? No, the answer is no. Because the timing is such, which is quite obvious to all of us, that it was absolutely motivated. Now, who motivated it? The people are still the same. How did they get the money for that? So obviously, there must be somebody who would have done that, and somebody must be having that kind of interest. Similarly, we also see some of the terrorist groups who are targeted against India. They are being funded, and they are there. The whole world chooses to look the other side. In case of terrorism, let's talk of the LET and JUD and many other terrorists like Hafiz Saeed or Maulana Masood Azhar. Now you have another country putting technical hold on they being declared as global terrorists or international terrorists. There is the entire United Nations put together has not been able to come to a definition of terrorist, because somebody is terrorist, somebody is a freedom fighter. Now Turkey is saying in no uncertain terms that I will not agree to Sweden joining NATO because they are helping the Kurds, the Kurd terrorists. Now Sweden feels the other way around, that those guys are basically exercising their democratic right. So these are different. These are so-called weaknesses of democracies which make it vulnerable. Now what happens is, the out of all the elements of comprehensive national power, economy is the largest and most important in today's world. And therefore, to pursue economic interest, United States has been looking for whether it is energy, whether it is oil. When you did not discover shale oil, then oil was the biggest attraction. Then after you got the shale oil, then oil may not be that kind of attraction, but there are other attractions. So influence of power, United States had 600 bases all over the world, largest by any country. I think China has got not more than 20, 25. So therefore, what has happened is that intervention was certainly is easier in democracies. And why those democracies were the regime change took place? Because the strategic interest and economic interest was different in each case. And there was, and it was done to pursue the United States interest in whatever manner. You can take various examples. Somewhere the interest was oil, somewhere the interest was to checkmate USSR, somewhere the interest was perhaps to exploit the mineral resources of that particular country, more so in Africa. Reasons may be different, but at the end of the day, democracies are easy targets for regime change. Back to you.
You mentioned around 600, 500 plus bases. Actually, 750 plus bases. America has 750 plus bases.
Yeah, correct. That's right.
Out of which 55 plus are just around China. And on the Western Pacific area, because that is close to the west coast of the United States, it's easier for them to go from there. In fact, I live in San Diego, and it is a major base for China and Japan both, even though they have peace with Japan now. So now coming to next question around the democracy and business, we see American agencies helping American businesses a lot. Like, for example, Facebook and Twitter. Now, we all know Jack Dorsey's recent comments on India, and who was the creator of Twitter. Now, luckily, it's owned by Elon Musk. I'm very appreciative of that one. So we see the American social media companies, like you correctly said, they are part of the information warfare, and majority of the Indian population is on American social media platforms. And which means that any groups which is controlled from the USA, and they don't have any server in India. Facebook USA has a database of all the Indians, and they have the jurisdiction on that too, because it's as per American laws. Once they collect the data, it's per American laws. There is no such law in the world which segregates data based on the local populations. So now that can be easily used for subversive activities against India or any other nation. The one classical example I'll give: in Burma, the entire protest against the Burmese government was driven through social media groups of Facebook groups. And that was directly the result of American agencies. Now, how far that is a threat to upcoming elections in India and also the national security of India?
See, data is a new oil and data is power. So this power can certainly be played in various methodologies. But what I visualize is that as far as India is concerned, it is not that big a factor for the simple reason because the dynamics and politics of India has changed slightly. Nowadays, people do see development as an important facet of election. And we have seen the non-performers are not being re-elected, and the performers are being elected. And this has been a general trend, notwithstanding all the rumors and things like that. So by and large, you find that social media may play a role. Certainly, the opinions are there, but then the fact is, we are a developing country. And when the masses get a gas connection, masses get toilets, masses get direct bank transfers into their into their accounts, they can't just shall I say wish away that. Similarly, you see certain responses which happen. You see the response in COVID. Every time the government said that okay, we should go for lockdown, everybody did go for lockdown. Even when they said okay, we should all now blink one light at night. You will find the whole country was blinking a night at night. Similarly, when you see the kind of response which the country gives to any kind of, shall I say, external incursion, the way the whole country joined up when the standoff took place and the way we responded, I think it was a sight to see. And one would have said that I think India is the only country which perhaps has a very peculiar problem, that we have two nuclear neighbors, both are belligerent, with both we have unsettled border, and yet we are confident enough to take them on. And we have the, shall I say, full confidence that we will use the terrain friction. China may have large army, may have large anything, the kind of technology, etc., number of military assets. But then the fact is the terrain friction of Himalayas, if better used, then nothing very much can be done. Similarly, when it comes to Pakistan, I think we have proved it again and again as to how India can handle them. So therefore, there is something in this country wherein everything is not taken at the face value. Yes, the social media campaigns make a lot of difference, and the individual victories and defeats may perhaps get affected sometimes, but the overall, shall I say, pattern of election, because even we saw that there are, as of now, in the country, there are 20 states being ruled by 20 different parties. But the fact is, you ask anybody, all interviewers, all TV channels, when they were asking any guy, whom do you think, what do you think, who should be leading as far as the central government is concerned? So they said, no, we vote differently for the state. There we want a local government to take over. But as far as country is concerned, Modi ji should take over. It's as simple as that. So these are the kind of sentiments people, I think, are looking towards the development, even in the local elections. Guys who didn't perform on the development agenda, on the inclusive agenda, on the corruption agenda, they had to perish. The fact why Yogi Adityanath is so popular is because his agenda is straightforward. He's a no-nonsense guy, and irrespective of the kind of social media campaigning being done against him, every second day there are various minority groups which keep putting social media campaigns like anything, but yet nothing has happened. He is still going strong, because when it comes to voting, they still vote for him, because then there comes their actual governance, and they know that our life is affected. So therefore, I think we do not visualize the kind of dangers that our social media and our data platform can be used to harm our interest as Indians. But there is no doubt that there is a growing awareness of the importance of data, importance of database, and you will find that even our government and people are becoming little more conscious, to be little more protective about the data. And that is why a pressure is coming on the social media platforms, or the US platforms too, including Twitter, that you please follow, see the kind of code wherein our data is not compromised. So this awareness is coming, but notwithstanding that, as you mentioned very rightly, that most of the social media platforms being used in India are American. We made a modest beginning. Like for Twitter, we have started off with Coup. Now that's an Indian platform. We've started off. That's a modest beginning, but I think we will take time. And all our digital platforms, digital financial transactions. Can you believe it that we started off very late during COVID? The digital transactions hit a figure that today, out of 100 transactions happening all over the world, there's financial transactions, 46 are happening in India. That's the kind of, we were not producing any PPE before COVID. We were, and after the COVID ended, we were second largest manufacturer in the world. So that is the kind of resilience perhaps which the Indians have. So that I think gives us a lot of hopes that I don't think we'll be carried by social media and we'll vote for the right guys at the right time.
In India, the even though these digital successes are there in India, but there are no app stores, Indian app stores,
Yeah.
and there are no Indian like a Google App Store or Apple App Store. We don't have. Plus, we do not have the regulatory authority on regulatory framework on the apps engines, and which is a problem also in India, which can be which can be corrected if the Indian startups take an initiative. And I can definitely help some of them over there if they want to do that. The third thing is that India doesn't have the uh, very robust data protection. Like in USA, I can say, like if you go to some big data centers here, which is armed protection. So if you come near the data center, you can be shot dead. It's that much high level of protection they've given. So coming to the next question on the geopolitics, and that's your strength areas. You have seen the Russian, you commented on the Afghanistan withdrawal of American troops. But in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, you can see that the Russia is fighting against NATO, 30 countries, around 29 countries. And we can see the resilience of the Russian armed forces, where the production rate of their infantry is so high, of the missiles and other things, that they can produce up to 3.5 million shells missiles per year now. That's a rate which the entire West cannot match. In fact, the USA and UK and the other countries in NATO have been reported to have, like they've said, they have maximum 1 week of fighting strength, maximum 1 week. So in case of an eventual like scenario for India, because if India has to protect its economic interests, the armed forces have to be strong or stronger, and they should be able to patrol all areas where the Indian trade flows, wherever it flows. We go to South America, Africa, or Europe also. So, do you think that Indian production capacity will be able to match a war scenario like Russia versus NATO?
As of now, the clear-cut answer is no. But we are working towards that. This is a work in progress. We are looking at, you must have heard this phrase, Atmanirbhar Bharat. We are looking at self-reliance. We are looking at, that's why all our deals now are with transfer of technology. We are the largest buyer of the military hardware in the world. That is 11% of the global buying of hardware is being done by India. But we are also diversifying. We were overly dependent on Russia, and the reason was that technology was denied to us from the West. And when we got independence, the British did rule us, but then they did not shift the defense manufacturing to India. And therefore, we had to start from zero. And therefore, I think we were late starters. And with indigenous technology, the progress which we have made is not as we would like it to be. So therefore, there is a lot which we have to catch up as far as this aspect is concerned. There is no doubt that Russians have tremendous capability in terms of surge capability, in terms of production capability of military hardware. India doesn't have that kind of capability as of today. But yes, India is looking towards it and working towards it. The low technological equipment, that I think we have done fairly well. Most of our ammunition, when it comes to the low tech ammunition, that everything is being manufactured in India. We are not importing much. But when it comes to the high tech military hardware as well as software, that is where we are dependent on others. We are now, shall I say, it's not only Russia. Russia, we were earlier 60+% hardware was coming from Russia. Now it is down to 45%. Similarly, the share of France has increased, USA has increased, and with all these deals which happened during Prime Minister Modi's visit, if all of them finally materialize, then I think USA will be second largest. They will overtake France as far as defense imports to or exports to India is concerned. But most of the things we have also opened up. I think USA also has realized that if China challenge has to be taken head on, then India is necessary, because Chinese vulnerability, they pass around India. That is, the sea lines of communication are so geographically located that India is necessary to dominate Malacca Strait, to dominate Indian Ocean, and to dominate whatever China can do. So to choke China, you require India. Similarly, all the countries, including United States, saw that during COVID period, China did blackmail and try to profiteer out of becoming a global factory, or they being a global factory. So now there is a need for alternate supply chain, alternate technological chain, alternate defense manufacturing, alternate defense chain, cyber, you name a thing. So I think India and USA and the Quad countries, they all are working towards it. And in that, one thing has been realized even by United States, and I must admit there, to say even all the Pentagon papers are also looking at that, that India needs to be strengthened and the capacity building of India is required. And if you have better capacity building, then only you will be able to balance out China, because China is becoming a very big challenge. And I mean, I would not hesitate in saying that US is losing ground in a lot of places, and Middle East is one such place. And one of the reasons had been lecturing far too much. Lecturing on Saudi Arabia did not pay them. Whereas when China is doing the charm offensive, they are saying that irrespective of what you do in your country, China is least bothered what Iran is doing with its women. But so long it is meeting their interest, they are happy to shake hands with them. Same is the case with any other country. They don't mind what Syria is doing, but so long it meets their interest, they will do it. So now USA also will have to be perhaps come down from the idea of being a global policeman or global lecturer on rights and democracies, because that doesn't suit their national interest. And you see that the moment you used economic coercion beyond a point on Russia, as you rightly mentioned, there are 30 countries on one side, 40 trillion GDP on one side, compared with 2 trillion of USSR or of Russia. Yet Russia is surviving. The perhaps economic slowdown in UK has been much more than Russia. At the end of this, as far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned. And this is because, and one thing which the whole world has learned is that your dollar reserves can be seized if you do not follow US line at some point of time. Now everybody is looking at alternate method of financial, and the biggest strength of United States was its strong hold on the global financial system. Now, if that weakens, then there is a cost to pay. It's a very heavy cost to pay. And as of now, everybody you find is working. BRICS is looking for new currency. Everybody is looking for barter trade. Today, Sri Lanka has said that, okay, I will give you tea to Iran and I'll buy oil from there. So barter system is starting. Gold reserves are coming up. Different models. Today, Indian rupee is being exchanged. Our SWIFT, our payment, digital payment system is being exercised in 13 countries. UPI is being exercised in 13 countries. So these are trends, which means that perhaps the economic coercion crossed an overdrive or crossed a threshold, which perhaps was not to the interest of America.
You highlighted some of you're so well educated, and so many researches you have done, so you can come up with a very precise answer for my general questions. Now, coming to last question of the day, like the last question is, and we'll continue this series as per your time permits. I know you're very, very busy. One of the questions which really affects the American and also the West is, if you look at the history, India's or the world's biggest enemy, especially India's biggest enemy, has been the West. Where they divided India whimsically. They tried to, and recently President Obama gave a statement which was almost like a statement of, British Prime Minister. I call him the bulldog of UK. I won't even take his name here. But the thing is that same old colonial strategies, that's a mindset. as if like America is stuck in 1946 or 45. He's not come out of World War II yet. And dividing India, breaking India. And at the same time, one American politician said, the friendship of America is literally suicidal. He said that to be a friend of America, to be an enemy of America is bad, but to be a friend of USA is fatal. And Prime Minister Modi did a very successful visit, and he initiated the America India framework, AI. That's what he called it, and it was very well received by Americans. But at the same time, a deep distrust exists because of American lecturing habits and American ideological superiority habits, that we are the greatest nation on the world, and the human rights abuses in the USA of Native Americans, Black African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and now Indian Americans. We are also included now in the hate category. Chinese Americans, significantly, Korean Americans, Japanese Americans, and in Asians were on one side, Asians, Africans were on one side, and the other side was Anglo-Saxon pride. So tell me one thing now, in this, with this background of USA, reality of the USA, when will an Indian leadership emerge, an academic leadership, I'm talking about political leadership, which highlights the condition of precarious condition of Native Americans and all the minority groups? It has not been raised successfully in any part of India. When will it be raised so that to question Americans on their own human rights records in their own country?
See, when it comes to the official stance of India, by and large, it is being said that we do not interfere in anybody's internal affairs and nobody should interfere in ours. All the lectures, including the statement of former President Obama, that was trolled very badly. And I'm sure they must have got the kind of responses which they have. But when it comes to the class which governs, and for analysts like us, we are not really bothered actually with this criticism. We know that we have to make, see, a rising India will have challenges. Nobody likes a rising India. And therefore, rise of any country has never been smooth. So therefore, you have to take the challenges in stride. People will like to tell us as to what we don't have. Certainly, there's a lot which we need to grow. We are developing, our per capita GDP is far too low. We may be growing economically fine, but then we are 1.4 billion people. So as of now, we are in no position, or shall I say, in no mood to risk our, shall I say, diplomatic investments anywhere by criticizing anybody on their internal matters. And we are quite opposed to anybody criticizing our matters. In fact, if you recall, long back when Prime Minister Modi had gone to USA, and President Trump just mentioned that if you want, we could mediate between India and Pakistan. He says, Prime Minister Modi said in no uncertain terms, no, we will resolve ourselves. I mean, there's no requirement of anybody else to get worried about India in this context. So there were very plain and simple answers. But we have now, it's a new India, which is a strong India, which is confident India. And therefore, anyone lecturing India is not being liked and being replied also. Earlier, you would find that there used to be diplomatic overtones, used to be quite, shall I say, diplomatically sweet talks. But now I think our Foreign Minister Jaishankar has given a very good answers in very many questions when they were raised, like Ukraine. So many people tried to get us on their side, question us, question our credentials, but we were quite clear. When the question regarding the oil, obviously he says, my interest is I have to make sure that my people per capita income is so low. I have to give them oil at the cheapest price. and that is my national interest, and I will do it. You started the war. The war is between two parties. Firstly, it shouldn't have been there, and secondly, if it is there, we certainly are not a cause because of it, and therefore, why should we be suffering? Why should global South be suffering? And therefore, we will do what suits our people best. Whether it may suit somebody's interest, it may not suit somebody's interest. That's a separate issue. So, such voices are strong. Similarly, as you mentioned, I think India is very, very concerned about diaspora. India's diaspora is a strength. Indian diaspora has to be supported. And therefore, the voice of Indian diaspora is to be strengthened. The fact that whenever Prime Minister Modi goes to a country, including United States, and he makes it a point to meet the Indian diaspora, he makes it a point to show the strength of Indian diaspora, and he also makes it a point to be talking about Indian diaspora. And therefore, the fact and the countries concerned, they do realize that this is a strong community which can make or break elections in a democracy, and nobody is scared of more than anything other than the elections. So in democracies, elections actually dictate a lot of things, including the behavior inside. And India is growing. We have the largest English-speaking, young, technologically qualified population in the world. This population will settle down in various countries in the world. The diaspora is going to increase, and by and large, the Indians are hardworking guys, and therefore the per capita, shall I say, income of Indians in any country is generally more than the overall per capita income of that country. So these are certain strengths which our diaspora is there, and our diaspora is our strength too, because you are our ambassadors, and therefore we are looking at. You will not find a question not being raised in times to come. The only thing is that India is not global policeman. We will not like to repeat the mistakes which West has been doing at times of lecturing others. But if there is a concern, I think all cases of ill treatment of Indians in America or Indians elsewhere have been taken up by our MEA. You would have seen that anywhere if there was a disaster or a war, the best evacuation has been done by India. And we have evacuated every single Indian from that particular country who wanted to be evacuated. Now, this is a demonstration which the whole world has seen in last decade. And I think confidence also exists that Indian government will reach out to you if you are in trouble anywhere, anytime. So I think these issues may not be raised in public, because we maintain that we don't interfere in somebody else's internal affairs. Nobody should interfere in ours. But when it comes to private conversation, when it comes to social media, when it comes to guys like me writing, I think we have no hesitation in taking up case of Indians in any country.
No, what a wonderful conversation this has been, and I can see the views of so many students coming out. And thank you, General Asthana, for coming on the show and answering such important questions with such clarity. We'd like to bring you on whenever you have time, next time, and
Most welcome.
take your inputs. And also to summarize, we talked about democracy, we talked about American wars, we talked about American influence and also Indian influence, and also why America is losing trust of all the countries in the world, not just one or two, including Europe. Not even Europe is excluded there. So only country which remains trustworthy for Americans is UK, their parent organ country. So if you want to get more details about the colonial past, you can also check out my book, Gold, Glory, and God, and let us know your viewpoints. And also General Asthana's books. I'm going to send you the link, and also publications that he has done, so that you can have a review of all the talks that he has done, and also all the articles that he has written. Over 450. That's a lot. So thank you so much, General Asthana, for coming on the show. And thank you for all the viewers who are watching the show. Do like, share, subscribe, and share widely so that this interview goes far reaches. You'll get the best discussions on Sattology, always independent. We are a non-profit, and we stay away from all politics. Namaste and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being on your show and on your channel. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.